Hi everyone, Lucretia here. Now, if you've been watching my videos, you obviously know that I am a psychic channel. And one of the things I'm really big on is the fact that you can be psychic and normal at the same time. And so I'm really passionate about talking and letting people bring those gifts into the light about how you can be psychic and use your gifts in the everyday world to do what it is that you want to do. Now, as part of that, as I'm sure you're not surprised to hear, I have many friends who are also a little bit psychic. What? Actually, I don't know how you can be a little bit psychic. I think you either are, you're not really. We can talk about that in a second. And today I have my beautiful friend Carrie with me. Ta-da!
Hello!
And Carrie, well, do you call yourself psychic?
Only just recently.
Only just recently? What were you before?
Intuitive.
Intuitive?
Yeah.
Okay. So a lot of people do call themselves intuitive rather than psychic. I think there's a bit of, I don't know, sometimes a bit of nervousness about claiming the psychic thing.
Yes.
Yes?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of preconceived ideas about what psychic means.
Yeah.
I think when you, for me, I think if I was to use the word psychic before, people automatically assume that they want a reading.
Yep.
You're looking into their future. There's all these, all these preconceptions that I didn't really want to be a part of. It was almost like I would have to prove it if I call myself psychic.
Ah, you have to prove it. Right. Okay.
Whereas intuitive, it's like it's a very, it's a very passive word, don't you think?
You know what? Yeah, it is passive, and it's much less. I think sometimes we feel it's much less confronting for people who don't have those gifts.
Yes,
to
definitely.
navigate. And I wonder if that's a bit of a mindset that we've got around thinking that being psychic is something that's confronting.
Yeah, possibly.
You know, because I don't think it has to
Yeah.
be. Like it's just part of who you are.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I think it's literally the labels that go with it.
Yeah. So obviously you've struggled with a bit of that around what to call yourself, and that you've called yourself intuitive. So let's get down to then, how does that show up for you? Like in your everyday, what are those kinds of skills that we're talking about that are intuitive / psychic, whatever you want to call them?
Okay, so for me, I'm a children's healer.
Yep.
And when I first starting on my healing work, I was working a lot using muscle testing. So I wasn't necessarily tuning into the child psychically. I was literally just muscle testing. It was very much a step-by-step process, which felt very logical. It didn't feel it felt very kind of left-brained.
Yep.
In the way that I was doing it.
Yeah.
And for me, what happened was once I started to do the muscle testing a lot more, and really I started to tune into a different world, and I was actually able to. Before I started muscle testing, the answers would just come. So I would find myself just knowing the answer, or I could actually just think in my mind, if I muscle tested this, what would the answer be? And I would just know the answer. And so that was kind of how my awareness of my psychic skills started to kind of come to the light. And for a long time I really dismissed it and I didn't trust it.
Yeah.
And I thought, that was just a hunch, it was just that whole no, surely not. No, not me.
And yet you're proved right every single time.
Yeah.
So you'd feel it, that it was right, and then you do the muscle testing, and oh, what a surprise, what you thought and felt in the first place was correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So it's, I guess that's the thing with this psychic stuff. It's just, it does really require you to have a huge amount of trust in self, because it really is about coming into you and listening to the messages that you are feeling or hearing or knowing or tasting or smelling, like however it's coming up for you. And I think for a lot of people, if you don't have that trust of self, and if you haven't been brought up in an environment where people really value and understand that it's okay to do that, then you do actually dismiss it quite a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a big connection between, I've had a practice of meditation for many, many years, and I think that, the more we're able to kind of still the mind, the more those, those psychic skills can come through. I think when
Yeah.
we're so busy and when we're kind of lost in the mind and all that mind chatter, it's almost impossible for, for spirit to speak through us. It's, it's always there. It's just we're just not capable of tuning in. So I think a lot of people who start on their personal development work and they start really working on themselves, that automatically involves tuning into self, it involves stilling the mind, it involves getting rid of limiting beliefs. They're creating that space, and so quite often I think that's when these skills, these psychic awakenings occur, because it's just a natural byproduct of quietening the mind and tuning in. So
Yes.
it automatically, it's part and parcel of that. I
Yeah.
think that's that's been my experience, but it's also what I've seen in other people as well.
Yeah, so it really opens up. The more you have that stronger connection to self and the quietening of the mind, the more the information can come through easily.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I know that too from my own personal experience. When you are really an emotional person, if you're going, I can remember literally a few years ago, I was going through a really emotional time, and I was really wanting to tune in and to get that guidance. And I was just an hysterical mess at that point. And I literally remember one of my spirit guides somehow getting a message through and saying, you need to calm down and ground in, because we can't communicate with you easily when you're in this space.
Yes.
So it's not just your mind chatter, it's also the emotional stuff. So when you have that overwhelming emotional, hi Celia, when you have that overwhelming emotional stuff happening, equally the messages can find it difficult to get through to you, for you to, in a way that you can understand them.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And so can I ask then, you use your psychic skills, which is what you're calling them these days? Yes.
Yes, it's a very new thing.
Okay, it's a new thing, the psychic skills. You're using your psychic skills because you're a specialist in working with children.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you want to tell us a bit about how you use those skills in doing that work?
Yeah, so when I'm now working with children, I work quite often for a 2-week period or a 7-week period with children, depending on what program, what their needs are. And what I offer in the program is I call it a daily healing, but what I'm actually doing is tuning in psychically to the child. And so I'm clairvoyant and clairaudient, and I literally see shapes. I see things around the child that I know don't necessarily belong to the child. They're kind of, and I don't really want to get into terms of what it is. All I see is I see shapes, and I know that things need to be cleared from the child. And so I literally tune into the child every day now, and I actually just clear it away. I do work with the angelic realm. I work with with the Ascended Masters. I also work with my spirit guides. I have a lot of help in doing this. It's not something that I'm doing on my own. I guess I'm facilitating it, and so I do that as a daily practice. And quite often when I'm doing that, I will be told, get the child to do this. The child needs to, start to do this more. The child needs to start saying this. And so I'll get that guidance, which I then relay to the parent and say, I think it'll be really beneficial for your child to, just recently it was about doing some colouring in some mandalas. And so that was something that would be really beneficial for a child to do. Another time it was literally using flowers and picking flowers and smelling the flowers and really, grounding the child into that flower energy. So, yeah, I never really know what's going to show up. And I never used to trust that, but now I trust it because it's getting louder and louder.
Yeah.
The more I trust it, yeah.
And so can I ask, what kinds of... you've obviously got these amazing gifts and you're working with the angelic realm, which is pretty amazing. When you're working with children, what kinds of things particularly are you helping them with energetically? Like what kinds of issues are they coming to you with, and how old are they, these kids?
So the children that I work with tend to be between the ages of 2 and 10.
So even really little then?
Yeah, really little. And I'm helping children, it's, usually behavioural challenges. So the parents have just had problems since the child was born in terms of they cried a lot, or they had behavioural challenges, or they just seem to have this anger that came out of nowhere that the parents can't understand. And often the behavioural challenges are tied into food intolerances, food allergies.
Ah, the food intolerances. Yeah, okay.
So I'm working to really to help the child spiritually and emotionally clear away what has created that, because quite often, it's the spiritual aspects and the emotional aspects that actually create the physical problems later on down the track. And so by actually helping, to clear this when a child's only 2, we're clearing the way for them to actually, I guess, stand in their own and, claim their own potential, rather than be hampered by all of these emotions and these absorbed energies, because a lot of the children that I work with are extremely sensitive. So
Right.
there's a massive connection between sensitivity and food intolerances. So, pretty much all the children who have food allergies are extremely sensitive. And they're sensitive to light, to sound, to touch, to foods, to all of these things. And so I'm really helping a child, clear what's not theirs and ground them as well, because as you know,
Yeah.
a lot of these children are not grounded, and so they're kind of all over the place. And that shows up energetically and, and behaviourally as, a crazy behaviour.
Because they don't understand what's going on, what's happening to them.
No, yeah.
Yeah, right, yeah. So I get that a lot, because when you are energetically sensitive and you're ungrounded, you get buffeted a lot more by the energies of the people and the places and just the, whatever realm it is around you.
Yeah.
And it can really push you around. And if you're a child and you've got no way to process that and no way to understand what's happening, you're saying that that's how it manifests for little kids, is that it'll manifest in behaviour that's a bit out of control, like anger, etc., because that's their only way of knowing how to respond to it.
Yeah. And it's really quite heartbreaking, because these children are extremely gifted in terms of they're really quite tuned in spiritually, but they don't have any way to understand that, and they don't have any way to logically process it. And so, as you say, they're almost just being thrown around constantly, and really, really overwhelmed, completely overwhelmed by everything that they're feeling around them. And so I think to be able to clear up a lot of that busyness and that, that absorbed energy around them, and to actually be able to give them tools to help ground them. So I created a set of daily guidance cards, which are oracle cards for children to really just, learn some basic techniques that are going to help keep them grounded. Things like, just mindfulness and forgiveness, and understanding how that plays out in their life, and not necessarily teaching it from an adult's perspective, but teaching it from a child's perspective. And so those kind of tools, these children will naturally gravitate towards, because it feels nice, it feels good, it's like home for them, it's like that connection, and it's like, that's what I've been missing. It's almost like the missing piece for a lot of these kids.
And we probably need to point out here that Carrie has 4 children of her own, so you have a bit of experience of being around kids and working with children generally.
And I was a sensitive child myself, and that's where it all comes from. A lot of I was extremely awake as a child, and suffered a lot because I didn't have the understanding, and I didn't have the help at the time to be able to process what was happening, why I could know what everybody else was feeling.
And that's right, when you're a kid and you can feel everyone else's stuff, it's like, what's going on, like, and how come other people aren't feeling this as well, and is there something wrong with me as well, and am I just weird, or am I imagining it, or all these different types of stories start to run through their heads.
Absolutely.
And if their parents aren't gifted in that way, and they don't understand what's going on, then it can make the child even more uncomfortable with what's happening.
And I think children, for myself, I automatically started to change how I was acting to manipulate the energy in other people, because I could literally read other people like a book, so I'd know, okay, that wasn't good. When I said that created that reaction, so I would change how I spoke around different people to manipulate how people felt, because I couldn't stand that energy of, any kind of conflict energy within somebody else.
You could feel it.
Yeah, I could feel it. So I changed who I was. I pretended to be the person that I knew I needed to be for that person to
feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Jeez. Right.
And I was doing this all my life. Even as an adult, I was doing this. And I think, to really now know, I don't need to change who I am. But what I need to do is just have that awareness, and that, it's not mine. It really isn't mine. So, it's quite a...
That's huge.
It's quite a journey.
That's really huge.
Yeah.
Because I think certainly adults even do that. We do. Hey, Lucy. We even.
Hey, Lucy.
We do adjust ourselves. If you're energetically sensitive and you don't have a strong sense of self, and then you can feel that stuff from other people, then you will often modify your behaviour to fit in.
Yeah.
And I think that's the other part, is that when you have this level of sensitivity, then you want to fit in, but you know that you don't really fit in because the other people around you aren't like you. and yet you feel like you want to put yourself in a box to fit. And the thing is, you're not meant to go in the box, baby. Right? Like, it's conformity is the devil. I'm sorry. I do believe that, like, conformity, you know, that's where the devil is, okay, trying to fit into what other people's expectations are. And I totally get that, like trying to put yourself in that box. So I guess my other question is, when you're able to tune into kids in this way and to help them in this way, and you help them with behavioural issues and you with the food intolerances, that kind of thing, what are the results that you are able to get by doing this kind of work with kids?
So when children have got a lot of food intolerances, that's usually because of the emotional components of what they've been feeling due to their sensitivity. So I literally address the emotional components and I clear the emotional reasons that have created that sensitivity to particular types of food. So, you know, a child who has got a lot of, say for example, a lot of sense of failure, whether it's theirs or whether it's their parents that they've absorbed, they tend to need to put it somewhere. It needs to be, the subconscious mind needs somewhere to pin it, to keep it from spilling out and just completely taking the child's mind over. And so the subconscious mind is genius and actually goes, well, okay, we'll create this intolerance around this food and we'll put all of that emotion towards that. And so this is again how my psychic skills come in, because I can see that, I can see the food and I can see the energy around the food. And so when we remove the energy, those, you know, the trapped emotional energy around that food, quite often then the body goes, oh, that food's okay now, because there's none of that energy attached to it. So you know, it works literally. That is how simply it works. And sometimes it can be a bit more complicated. I think there can be, you know, if there's mineral deficiencies, if there's other, you know, physical things going on within a child, but usually, you know, a child will be able to tolerate all foods after the emotional component has been addressed. So it's really it's been life-changing for many children. And so because we're addressing the emotional cause, their behavior automatically improves as well. So the foods, you know, the food allergies, the food intolerances have been cleared, but also the emotional side and the behavioral sides have been addressed too. So it's like a really holistic way of addressing these problems in children.
So the child is a lot calmer all round then?
Yeah, and so because they're calmer all round, they're not then being buffeted around by more emotions, and so they're then not creating more intolerances to things. And some children don't develop intolerances, some children develop other problems. So it may be a behavioural issue, it may be a some kind of you know, it could be a stammer, it could be a you know, an issue like bedwetting, it could be, there's lots of different ways that it manifests in children, this emotional build up. But you know, underneath it all, the work that I'm doing is the same. I'm literally clearing that emotional blockages that are a result of extremely sensitive children. So it's
wow,
quite
that's very cool.
Yeah,
it's very cool. I imagine that would be really satisfying to be able to see a kid who's really struggling, and then be actually able, and their parents are like loving their child so much and have tried everything and just it's not working, and then to be able to come and see someone like you and goes, well, it's this emotional stuff, let's clear it out, and then to be able to see a really strong shift in that child, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's pretty cool that you can be psychic. I keep using the inverted commas, psychic, and use those skills in a way that delivers really practical and obvious outcomes for kids. Hi, Kay. Yeah, it's really cool. That must be really satisfying too.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because the more I do this work, the more the parents are starting to go, wow, this is really fascinating, and then they're interested in how it works for them, and how it actually may be may be a solution for a problem that they're facing. So it's it's really it's almost like an untapped resource for me, you know, emotional healing. I don't think people realize exactly how far trapped emotional energy creates, you know, how many problems it creates. And for me, it
creates illness, right?
Yeah.
And what you're saying is it creates physical illness, it creates behavioural change, all that different kind of thing. And I think a lot of people are really getting on board with now the idea that when you have emotional stuff that's unresolved, it's going to find a place to hide out in your body or to come out in some way. Like, you might think that you've just buried it, but that stuff's going to come out. And I think when you're a kid, though, the difference is when you're an adult, you're making more of a conscious choice to not deal with stuff and to bury it. Whereas when you're a kid, you're bearing it because you just don't have any mechanisms or understanding of what else to do with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I'm not surprised that some of the parents are seeing what you're doing and going, oh, well, maybe that's why I've got that constant gut issue, because I'm bearing all my emotions about this stuff that I haven't resolved in my stomach, and then I'm just getting all these food processing issues that I don't really want, and what can I do about that? So I suppose in the process you're educating the parents as well as helping the children, and educating the children and empowering the children as well, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's permanent, you know, the changes that happen. It's not to say that those, you know, they can't create more intolerances if they continue to accumulate more stuff, but I think to clear away what has created the problem, and then to give them and their parent the tools to support the child, to ground the child. Their life goes off on a completely different trajectory than
nice.
Which is extremely satisfying.
I bet
what
it
I'm
is.
here to do.
It's what you're here to do, right? I think that's the other thing is when you have these particular kinds of special gifts, often we are drawn to do particular kinds of work. So we have the capacity to do a lot of different things energetically to help people, but we are inevitably drawn towards a few different spots where we are particularly strong and really want to serve in. And yours is obviously the emotional healing with little kids.
Yeah.
Or with even teenagers, you know, whatever age. It's really cool. And the whole grounding thing, that's so super, super important when you're energetically sensitive. I've done 2 videos on that in the last 7 days. And for me, when I see people who are energetically sensitive and psychic and it's unmanaged, ungrounded, like it's a really super uncomfortable place to be.
Oh yeah.
So I can only imagine how that feels for a 2-year-old who doesn't know what the heck is going on.
Yeah.
Really distressing for them and for the parents.
Absolutely.
Nice. Okay, so I hope that's given you a little bit of insight about what being psychic in the real world can look like and how it's people use their skills to help others, to serve in that way in their everyday life. Yeah, so I'm going to put Carrie's details in a message underneath this live. So if you want to know more about what she does, absolutely get in touch with her. She's freaking awesome.
Thank you.
We are. I have awesome friends. All of my friends are awesome. It's like a non-negotiable, right? If you're my friend, you're awesome. That's it. All right. Anyway, until next time, take care, and we'll talk to you all soon.
All right,
bye.